1, 2, 3. Oh, it's loud. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Yeah, on short notice, Scoop asked me to jump in for the color grading tool, color grading talk. Shame I missed that one. Yeah, I gave a similar talk a year ago with a slight hangover, and then I had some time practicing the same thing for NVC a month ago. So maybe it will be a little bit smoother this time. So once again, I will start with a disclaimer. So this is not a Bible or something on good design or maybe what's bad design, but it's more like a field of suggestions, and you can walk through that field and pick flowers, and once in a while you find something that you really like, and then you might be able to use it in your own production. And another warning, so I'm not expert in always making really beautiful design. So the talk is roughly structured in 5 parts, and I will start with the first part. It's basically how to find a concept, and that having a concept is a good thing. So yeah, again, start with numbers, begin 14, 32, 126, and of course, you all know where these numbers come from. And yeah, I decided to start my talk with numbers because it stands for 2 things that are really important for me when it comes to demo design. The first thing is that every time I watch this demo, I ask myself, okay, like what do these numbers stand for? Like what's this guy with this voice trying to communicate and tell me? And yeah, obviously there's no like answer to that. There's no comments in the info file, or no like statement from Smash or desktop revealing what it's supposed to mean. But the second point is actually also, if there would be an explanation or like a guidebook or something, it would take away a lot of this demo, because you would stop thinking what is the purpose of this. So you would maybe stop watching it because you stop wondering. And this might be a little bit similar than when Ridley Scott explained what the unicorn meant in Blade Runner, and thus like stopping all discussions whether or not Decker is an android or a replicant or not. So some pointers of getting a concept or coming to a concept. So the easiest thing is like try to come up with some characters and give them some names and some rules. And so I'm not talking about like cute little things with ears and horns and eyes and stuff, but a character can be anything. Like snow can be a character, or a cube can be a character, or a rectangle, or a particle system. And for instance, you can start with this universal rule for screenwriting. So literally all screens you see in movies is you have like one character you are somehow interested in, and this character tries to get something, and he can't reach it. And most of the time the movie is about like how this character tries to like achieve his goal. For instance, like we use this like character thing in Seeker, where basically you have a ribbon, and this is not a ribbon, but it's like a character ribbon, and this ribbon like starts growing from the bottom of the ocean and wants to reach the light where it's bright, and so it's always growing upwards, and through like his growth, it basically reaches all kinds of obstacles that turned out to be demo scene effects. And yeah, it worked out nicely on that one. You can also take an existing story and change its setting and characters. So an example I always like to give is, so you can take any fairy tale from the Brothers Grimm, or you can probably like open like the Bible and find like a page that's actually interesting where they tell a story, and then you can basically change like all the nouns and all the verbs with something different, and then try to like say, okay, how could I transfer that? And as an example, so there's this fairy tale everybody knows of the Little Mermaid, that falls in love with a human, but the human lives obviously in the normal air, and she can't breathe air because she's a mermaid, and so she dies of love. And so basically the same concept, I'm sure, is All is Full of Love from Chris Cunningham. Basically, you have this robot that tries to be human and or tries to find love, and she can't talk. You can also take a saying. So there are tons of sayings. So
and we've got a program counter to tell you where we are on the 16-bit address bus. These are all the instructions that are available.
So
I will get to
the grass is always green on the other side of the fence. So
several groups. So
if you start thinking about like, okay,
means that
like
they are
brainstorming what could be things that are related to that, so you come up with all kinds of like things like borders and things like crossing over borders or turning the sides or changing from good to evil and stuff like that. And so we explored a little bit for our invitation for Invoke for like some years ago. So where we are basically like playing around with like black and white and inverting colors and trees becoming roots and vice versa, and the horizon spinning, and so it worked actually nicely for that one. Basically finding some ideas to getting basically okay, like how is this form supposed to move. You can also try to create a world, maybe like I don't know, like a fantasy world or something. This is the hardest thing to do, I would say, for me, because it involves the most work and the most time. But sometimes it's nice to create. It will make things much easier to create a lot of content and fill up your world. So here are some sketches from a project I started actually with PS. And then I did a remake, Finally Inside. That was a little bit better. But basically the idea was that there's like a city falling down and crumbling and getting destructed, and like all the scrapes of the cities are like accumulated into like one big tower that gets more and more fucked up the higher you go. And basically on the top of the tower there's like one office of like one guy with like tons of like surveillance cameras, but the surveillance cameras are all broken because basically there is nothing else to watch. So and like this whole like idea of like, okay, what would basically a city look like if you like take the city and like stack it up into a tower, basically made like all modeling. So basically like once you have like, okay, this is the thing I'm going for, then modeling suddenly becomes very easy. What I do most often is like letting myself driven by imagination. So this is maybe you can turn it. So these are some scenes from Parsing, which basically started by listening to a soundtrack that was actually released earlier, so it's actually illegal to make a demo out of it, but nevertheless. And so I listened to like this one like breakdown in the music from Mad, where you had some kind of like car accident happening, but you don't really know what's going on because it's like Spanish and I don't know Spanish. So, but I immediately had like this thing, of course, okay, somebody stuck into like a coma or something during this car accident, and then like he never can escape like this car accident, and like there's an endless pattern of like streets being repeated over and over again. So I literally started from like, okay, like here we have this, and like how would the world look if you couldn't escape it, and this turned into this demo. What I do most of the time, so obviously you can combine these concepts, is basically try inverting. So the first 64Ks we did was Malevich, and there so Malevich, like this minimalist Russian painter that did the black square and white black square. So like the whole thing there was basically, okay, what's inside, what's outside, what's the negative space, what's basically, what is like a door that has become solid, so playing around with that. And so like this whole demo was a bit like forms assembling to new shapes, and this new shapes becoming basically negative space, and you fly into this negative space, just cover, and you have this constant loop of basically you explore what's inside, what's outside. You can obviously like explore with moods. So what does spring look like? What does like the end of the world look like? For instance, like ether is a perfect example for like what does the end of the world look like. And this is like a still from a scene where we had a breakdown with a very beautiful music from Gloom, and basically we had this like, okay, like what would it look like if a guy falls in love and like walks through the park and looks into like, and the sun is shining and stuff. So what I do frequently is say, okay, like if you would take the normal world and like make it more interesting by basically changing a fact. What is like, what would it look like if gravity would point up, or like sideways, or like if light would not be white but dark and stuff like that. So then with the same demo, basically we played around with like, okay, what would a city look like if like all the buildings would basically grow from the go downwards from the ceiling, and basically yeah, there's only one guy that basically stands up and always looks, oh, what would it look like? So what I tried once was focusing on an artist, which was a fine small path between basically stealing somebody else's concept and like giving it contribute. And it's a lot of work. So yeah, it might work. So and the good thing about that one is that you learn a lot if you really try to like take somebody's work you love and then try to figure out like, okay, how does he actually do it, and try to reconstruct it and like tweak it into like, let's say for Vasarely, we try to like, okay, hey, this can't be too hard, so we can actually do this with shaders. So this was our initial approach, and we tried to do it with shaders, and not quite. So yeah, what it's always interesting is basically limit your options. So don't go for the full Monty, but basically have a little list of stuff you don't do, or like a small list of stuff you actually do. So let's say no white flashes, or let's say the camera only moves forward or backward, or you never cut, or stuff like that. So basically that you take away option to basically concentrate on something more interesting, or like maybe through this limitation find some other potential. And an awesome example for that is basically a square, or elementary square garden, I think it was, from half bit of cheese. So where basically the whole demo is black and white, and it starts is composed mostly of white squares that animate and basically become character through the animation and finding it against the spheres. It's an awesome animation, so I can really encourage you to watch it. And yeah, they actually have colors in there, but you when you see it in the white flashes. What I love is the not telling everything, so keeping some stuff hidden away, and maybe become excited if people on Pool discover it. So after watching NumOS for a couple of times, I noticed like this little like arrow pointing like the particle system where to go. And yeah, I love like how the arrow is pointing to the arrow and this whole meta. And so an awesome example on like keeping subtle secrets is like the FedEx logo. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's even more awesome how they did the same thing with the Arabic version of the logo, which blows my mind. So then don't shout, suggest. So basically, this obviously evolution of vision with a very bad screen capture, but nevertheless, so the whole concept of like the adding additional post-processing effects to an animation, and you try to see something there, but you don't really know if it's like your bad imagination that you might see something there. And this whole like understanding is like a perfect example for a good concept. Like also combining it with like the title evolution of vision is just stunning. So the important thing to remember is like nobody has to know this concept but you. So actually I would recommend not to shout it out, but basically keep it for yourself and be amazed like what people come up with. So like when like I heard some people like discussing like Seeker, and what it's supposed to do is like completely so it's much more like rewarding, like, at least for me, if people come up with their own solutions for whatever you did. So the concept is not there so you're not writing the Bible where we actually like try to transport a concept, but it's more like helping you to make consistent, conscious design decisions. So every time, so is this a cube? Is it a sphere? Like, so if it's something organic, it's probably more like a sphere, something like that. So the next part of my talk will be on composition and a couple of layout rules. Some guidelines for me, anyways. So symmetry. So every time we have like something that's like symmetric in the middle of the screen, basically like we have like let's imagine we have in our like office where we do like all our demos, we have like a red light that goes point symmetry, and so you need to have some idea why you do that. So like putting something in the center symmetrical is like always the easy choice, but most of the time it's probably more interesting if you move it a little bit away, or if you have something that is not quite similar. On the other hand, like if you want to do something that looks like a monster, like everything that is like symmetrical immediately becomes a little bit more organic. But for like everything that's buildings and stuff like that, so my advice is like explore with asymmetrical stuff. And what you should never supposed to do is like rotating stuff around an axis or a point. This is so evil. This is. Then obviously, so try to avoid to put a horizon precisely in the middle, like I did here. This is also not a good thing. So if you have something where the horizon is important, like think about, okay, is it more like looking up or like seeing the sky and seeing the potential, or more like exploring the ground? So basically leaving it precisely in the middle is basically, then you leave the decision to the audience, which is probably the wrong solution. Then what works nicely for me is basically this rules of third, or like the, I don't know how you call it, but basically dividing your screen into like 9 rectangles. And then basically the two things I do once in a while when I try to check whether or not my layout works is, so on each of like these intersections I want to have, or like at one of these intersections I want to have something interesting going on, like only in one, but not here, that's the important point. And the other thing I once in a while check, that is basically I look at each of like these 9 rectangles, and I have the feeling that if most of them show some consistent image that is somehow like, I don't know, in itself balanced, then the whole thing is balanced. This is basically the way I once in a while approach my layout. I personally think that like this whole like golden spiral is, I think it's overrated. So it's interesting to look at the mathematical things behind it, but for layout, I think you can find all kinds of like designs and like draw some spirals on top of it. It's like, oh, like see how nicely it matches the golden ratio. But most of the time it's, I would say, bullocks. So I like this, like how like people like spend like a lot of time into like finding like the golden spiral in the Apple logo, and then like the designer's like, I don't know, like why people think like so. I would say if things look balanced to you, then most of the time they will have like this golden ratio for some reason. But if you basically try to throw the spiral on top of it and then try to squeeze your design into it, it's probably not a good idea. Then, so this is like the whole topic of my talk, obviously, but so it's easier to design if things have a meaning. So if you have basically two objects, and you want to put them on the screen, how do they look? So what color do they have, which texture? And if it's just like a rectangle and a sphere, you can't tell. But if you say, I don't know, maybe it's like a car riding over a person, then obviously like the car has to be the rectangle and it has to be bold and solid and a little bit bigger. And the victim has to be like a smaller circle. Maybe it's like a space station docking on or something. So suddenly you get like certain like ideas for proportion. I'm not saying that you are supposed to construct like space stations and stuff, but just like having some idea like this is like this and this is this will drive your conscious design decision and will probably produce more interesting results. Then one thing, probably one of the more interesting things I learned at university was actually not by a professor, but by a other student, was there's a perfect distance for most relationships. So relationships, basically assuming like two pieces of a relationship. So if they are like too far away, then basically there is no relationship. It's just like two entities that are independent of each other. And then if you basically move them closer, then eventually they will unite. And so the relationship is basically gone because it's only one entity. So the idea is basically that like if you have like two elements, like move them around the screen and try to move them back and forth and think, okay, like which is like the perfect distance for like keeping them together, but also like building up tension between them. And this can work for all kinds, like if you have something like, hey, you have your group name and the title of your product, so like what's the relationship between them? It's like together. So if you think like what's the relationship, it will help you to basically decide the distance and the proportions and stuff like that. So then obviously balancing is not straightforward. So if you want to balance like rectangular forms with like circular forms, then always like enlarge the circle a little bit. So you see this in basically all good fonts. The O is a little bit overshooting the M. Then if this is maybe my naive approach to like balancing stuff, but so I look at, so if I want things to balance out evenly, then I assess basically, okay, what's the complexity of the shape, what's the contrast of the thing, what's the color and the texture of the thing, and then basically like they all have to match somehow to balance them out. So if you have something like that is like strong and square and wide, and you want to balance it with something that is for some reason like gray, you have to make the gray things bigger to balance it out. So if something is like colorful, then you have to balance it even more. But if you have to two colors, then you have to say like, okay, like bluish is like not as like fighting for attention than yellow, for instance, or like the yellow is like a little bit more saturated here than the blue, so you have to like balance them. Then really nice advice, always try to overshoot. So go for the extremes, not like, so if you have like two text, it's like 14 pixels of font size, so let's increase it to like 16, or like 16 and 18. Make it like, hey, what does it look like with 40? How does it look like with 200? How does it look like with 1,200? And then move backwards if you see that your layout is breaking down. But then my advice is like always like jump way above the limit you actually think this is the correct value, because it will be easier to divide and conquer to find the right things. And then if you go for like really extreme values, like in demo scene effects, you have very often like this, like Gloom told me once that like, I don't know who did like this, the code for like that, but basically here is your shader. You can move this slider here and this slider here and like make like the sphere wobble. And Gloom was like, oh, okay, what is if I turn the radius to minus and the spikes to like plus 5,000 and like, oh, wow, crazy stars effect here. And so basically, if you explore like the really out far parameters, you discover really beautiful things. So then do the opposite is always effective, but there are rare opportunities to do that. And small thing, so basically straight lines are like unnatural. So if you want to make it a little bit more natural, like slightly tilt the horizon, it will like immediately look a little bit more realistic. Then it takes like really subtle things. If you have like a reduced layout to lead the eye, so it's really, and you should think about where you want your audience to look first, and then you add something there to make them look there. Then negative space is underrated, so I promised myself one day I will make a demo that completely focuses on negative space and like how you swap between like what's in the foreground, what's in the background. So I did 15 years I did a sketch, and one day I make this demo. Then advise focus your details on important areas. So once you know that you led the eye to a certain region, and you do a party demo to win, so not like an experiment, but something you actually like want to do the demo thing. Then, for instance, here we had like this greeting part, so people were obviously reading the greetings to make sure they find the greetings. We had like some color transition above like showing like where the greetings are coming, and so we have some color highlights there, but we know that basically people don't have time to like check out like the top left corner that's actually made of 20 cubes or something, because they were like busy scanning like the other parts of the screen. And since we are not Hollywood, we don't have time to like work out anything. So try to lead the eye to a certain region, then like invest like most of your energy into like tweaking like this region, make it beautiful and well balanced and like with a lot of detail. And if you have like tons of times later, you can like basically add detail to the rest. But most of the time we don't. So then I can't emphasize this enough, do the mirror trick. So one day I will add a shortcut to my demo tool to basically flip the image, because this helps you to re-evaluate your composition. So this is amazing how well it works to like tweak something backwards and oh wait a second, actually I would tweak it, and then you can flip it back, and then okay, and then eventually like by flipping it a couple of times you find interesting new layouts. So once again, these are not rules, just like some ideas to play with. So there are tons of, so like the whole Gestaltenform and stuff, so you can read whole books about this topic. So some words on camera, like the engineering, universal engineering flowchart, and then the universal demo scene flowchart, I would say. So if you have a camera, think about, does your camera have to move? And if it has to move the camera slowly. Like, if you go for like, okay, if you have the option between like editing or like moving the camera to certain areas, always edit. This is my thing. So, on the same notion, so the faster you move your camera, the smaller your scene is. So if you want to have like a big scene, make your camera move very slow. So this is an example, obviously Silk Cut from TBL, and you have like this gorgeous scene of like this canyon made of 20 faces or something, but it just like looks big. I remember when I saw this demo for the first time, I was like getting goosebumps, and so you really see that it's not their first demo, because in their first demo they would have flown all over the place with like high speed, but they move the camera slowly, very slowly, and take their time to build up the scale. So, like, you can't fly around like that. So basically, if you move your camera like crazy through all kinds of angles, sometimes it works, but it might be more reasonable to think about, okay, like if there would be an actual observer, like watching this, like where would he stand? And it will make things way more authenticated. Authenticated, can you say this? Like realistic than basically if you would have like a quadrocopter camera like flying through windows and stuff. So if you want to make things drastic, add white flashes, edits, camera shakes, camera tilts, all kinds of stuff. But if you look at the camera is actually not moving that fast. You could have the option to move the camera like crazy, but they're not doing that. They're like adding all kinds of additional effects. Then small advice again, so add a point of reference for dimensions. So I love how a desktop is always adding like little helicopters into their city scenes so that you can actually have some kind of like, ooh, this is the scale of the thing that's supposed to have. So like the easy thing is like adding like doors and windows to a cube to make it a building. So it's very effective. Then I don't mind camera shake. So it's hard to do good looking camera shake, but so I basically, like the first real camera shake I've seen was actually in Debris. And they have like this awesome scene where basically, I think it's coming, I think the next one or something, where you actually have like the 9/11 effect where like somebody with a camcorder is actually moving around like a fence like to get a closer look and like, oh like no, I have to get, and then when she reaches it's too late. I love that scene. So there was a little bit of discussions on that on this paint over thread and put depth of field will make things look small. So if you ask like people, okay, like what's like estimate the size of it? We don't tell you what it is, but what do you think? What's the size of that? And if you ask normal people, they will tell you, oh, maybe like 20 centimeters, 50 centimeters, maybe like 5 centimeters. They will give you like a certain range of proportions. And this is because like through optical effects, which I can't explain you why that is, but depth of field is something that occurs if you do like macroscopic stuff, like looking through lenses or like have like really like look at small stuff. If you look at space stations, you don't have that. You don't have a depth of field if you look at mountains. So and it doesn't matter like how many like reference points you add, it will always look awkward. So keep in mind. So if you want to add, or like I did like a quick like search. If you look at Google Images and you look at mountains, no depth of field. If you look at flowers and teeny weeny stuff, lots of depth of field. That's why if you add like depth of field to create like a sense of like make it big, it will not work. If you want to make something big, it's a lot of work. It's probably much more work than you think. So I, like as an example, I had like this like gorgeous sketch of Craig Mullins, which is like my favorite digital artist. But then if you look basically what he does to, what he stacks up to build like this sense of scale, it's actually quite amazing. Basically he has like tons of transitions of like from cold color to warm color to cold color, from highly saturated to not saturated at all, from like from teeny weeny sparks on the water to like objects to rocks to like plains to blobs of mountain, and he also adds this little like thing here that basically makes sure that you start here looking at it and like basically exploring the scene, and through that like basically computing in your head like the size of the scene. Then yeah, some advice. So in traditional movie making, the ratio between content that has been shot at the set and content that has been edited for the movie used to be 1 to 10. or like 10 to 1. And so nowadays, obviously, there is even more content because they're shooting on digital all the time and having like 3 cameras running all the time. So my advice, produce tons of material, tons and tons and tons of material, because it, like, producing camera animations through random seeds is like really simple. And then it's basically spend like an hour or so like rotating the mouse wheel through your random seed and basically picking, oh, this is actually nice, and this is nice, and this is nice. But like 20 of something are not so nice. So really, by basically producing footage and throwing away footage you don't need, you will immediately increase the level of your production stuff. So let's talk about colors quickly. So my advice is always, or like, so this is how I approach it if I'm uncertain. I look at a picture or like a design I like, and then basically I do like a chart of like the colors that are being used, like the primary colors and how, like, what's the distribution. And by actually picking colors, it's more effective than actually thinking, oh, this color might be like, oh, obviously this is red, but it's not, because it's actually through like this whole complementary color thing there, it's like, it's a dullish brownish gray. So look at colors. So then color theory is, I would say, it's overrated, but you have to understand this. And most of you know that basically if you turn something, if you turn the hue towards red, then it becomes warmer. If you turn it towards blue, then it's becoming cooler. And both ends are the complementary colors. And so a nice application for that is the complementary shadows. So don't make your shadows black or gray or something, make them purple or blue. Because the light is shining with a yellow light, so everything that's lit is like a little bit warmer in reality. And everything that is not directly hit by the directional light of the sun is actually hit by the diffuse light of the sky, which is blue. And that's why you have like really, okay, this is obviously a really drastic image, but if you basically take the sample the colors, you really see the complementary thing. So this works nicely. We use this a lot. Then on the same notion, pure black is unnatural. So try to fill your screen with blotches of noise, so to add some depth to it. And basically, I like to, like, if you go for grayscale, don't use pure grayscale. Add like blotches of color here and there, so hints of color. So if you look at 5 faces and you remember it like that, but what you actually saw is like this. So like this little chromatic aberration effect that might be fake or not, doesn't really matter for me at least, but it adds like this little sparks of color that are important. So you have to speed up a little bit. Then clipping color is unprofessional. So then basically you see here that the white areas are clamped to pure brightness, pure white. And you don't want to do that. Or if you can avoid it, avoid it. So then obviously, like, this is one of my favorite demos of all times. And obviously, Visualize really knows what he's doing, and he's still clamping the whites. So there's always a reason to break the rule. Then try to use gradient curves for channels. So if you basically have an image, then you can try to, I don't know where the mouse is. So don't use the gradient curve for like RGB, but pick one channel, for instance, here the red channel, and then basically tweak the highlights and like increase like the lights for red, which makes the reds a little bit warmer. I don't know where you see it, maybe there. And basically crunches the like the complementary color, which is like the cyan, and make the shadows like a little bit bluish. And we used it a lot. So most of my color stuff is basically working on that. And then instead of like adding color, I learned that a good advice is actually to remove its complementary color, because it's giving like a better look. So if you want to basically make this image warmer, then you could add yellow, but you could also basically remove red because it's remove blue because it's a complementary color. So like forward. Then I recently discovered the power of like using color overlays instead of like colorizing stuff. So instead of like trying to tweak the colors inside the scene, we basically add like blotches of like big semi-transparent blobs of colors, and we have like an operator in our tool that basically distributes these blobs like randomly with different sizes and from colors, and then basically I spent like a couple of minutes like scrolling through the random seeds and until like find something interesting. For instance, for this scene, like this is like the thing without the color overlays. This is with, and yeah, it worked nicely here. Then I started to implement like the 3 color correction, so applying different corrections for the shadow, the midtones, and the lights. And we had a very, I don't know, like a 300 lines long shader that does like the whole like converting the colors and stuff. And nowadays I would go for, so it's effective. So this is the shader with like the different things we had there. And but now I only use lift gamma gain. And damn it. So actually, like the maybe later there will be a slide with the actually shader for the lift gamma gain, which is like 1 line of code. It's like really fast, and it's only 4 parameters, so it's only saturation and then basically a color for like the highlights, the gamma, the main color and the shadows, and this brings you almost everywhere, I would say. So it's really effective for getting like color into your image without losing control. So and another thing, like so if the footage is horrible, like fixing it on post will be difficult. So for instance, with like with Square, we basically had like everything was a parameter inside the shader. Like you see, like like it's all colors, color. Like everything that was in the shader that could be a color is a color, and I basically tweaked everything, like every like whatever, like fog color, background color, and so on. And then I tried to apply my color correction node, and I couldn't find anything to correct because the footage was okay. So, yeah, and here's basically this is the shader line for like this for the lift gamma gain correction, and yeah, I was really happy when I learned about that one. So process, don't think about it, just do it. So now I have to speed up quite a bit. So not doing research is stupid or extremely hard. So if you think, no, I don't look at other people's work because I have my own ideas and I don't want to be influenced. If you want to go there, I know an artist who does that, and she has no TV. She never goes to the movies. She only like listens to radio because not having a visual influence is basically almost impossible. And so if you have like visual image, if you go to a demo scene party, you see other works anyways. So that's why I would invest a lot of work into research. And so I discovered Pinterest a while ago, and now I have like, I don't know, Brazilians of like thumbnails from like stuff I like, and think like, okay, this might be a nice effect. Then I personally go for like first find a look, then implement it. So do Photoshop sketches if you can do this, or actually find somebody else's work and like then try to reproduce it. But first, like think about like, oh, what is my scene going to look like? Then so if you try to listen to your audience, I would say don't do that. So because it's a sure way to disappoint them. And so, yeah, we have like really interesting comments on our things all the time.
But cool.
Yeah. Then my personal thing is actually the don't repeat yourself. So I'm trying to, but whatever I do, I always do cities for some reason because this is the thing I can do good. But it's also boring, so I always try to do something else. But I don't know, for some reason it always ends up in cities. Then we have, or like within Still we have a wiki, and we have like all like projects. And every time we have an idea, we create a new project, we add some people that might contribute the music to it and stuff, and then we let it wipe there for like a year or so. And basically this helps to get it off your chest and leave it somewhere and add a couple of references. And maybe once in a while you feel, oh, actually this matches this one concept, and you have some place to throw this in. And eventually you want to, okay, there's a party coming up, so what can we do? Then you have like a repository of stuff. Then let it ripen. So from the initial sketches mid in a park to the final seeker was like 2.5 years. And actually working on it was like half a year or something. So it was like thinking about like, okay, what could this ribbon do? What could be the effects and stuff? Then I would work on your weakest side. This is my suggestion. So if you think you can't draw, then I say, hey, go to figure painting classes, because if you draw ugly shapes of people for half an hour, all your other designs will improve tremendously. So this is just, if you like think, oh, I can't draw, then draw. If you think, oh, I can draw, but I can code, then start to code, learn JavaScript, stuff like that, or shaders. So I would basically encourage you to work on your weakest side. Then have a sketchbook and fill it. So every time I have an idea, I do little scribbles, and then it's amazing how little you need to basically rebuild the idea later in your head. So, but if I wouldn't have done the scribbles, then I would have no idea what this original concept was. So, like, do tons and tons of sketches. Doesn't matter how rough. If you like write some annotations on it, you will understand what it was. We personally spent a lot of time in analyzing existing solutions and designs. So, for instance, there's like this awesome guy, Nick Kramer. What was this? Bill Kramer? I don't remember his name right now. But he has like a video co-pilot, and he has like tons of designs and tons of making offs of like After Effects stuff. And he also has a nice plugin for lens flares. And basically, we cloned all his parameters, because he spent a lot of time like thinking about like, okay, how can you build flexible like lens flare stuff? And yeah. So if there is a solution, don't waste too much time basically coming up with something that is smarter than something that is there. Try paint overs, obviously. So like some stuff from last year. So we had this Veriflux from ink, and basically like while watching TV, I made like a lot of like Photoshop stuff. So basically just like playing around with, okay, if you have a scene, okay, if you would add squeeze the color into a certain direction, are tons of like blotches of color, like how could a scene look like? And yes, it's very hard to basically implement it completely, but that's not the idea. I'm not saying like, hey, no, like completely rebuild that from scratch. I'm saying that it's a good idea to once in a while like explore like certain areas where you could go from your current point of design. So I like that one with like the light shining through. And obviously we do this for our own stuff as well. So this is an early production thing from Calcifer. And then basically I spent a lot of time basically doing like paint overs to figure out like, okay, like is it fire? Is it hot? Is it cold? So what is it? And basically trying to figure out like what's the color value in there. And then basically we tried to rebuild the same color thing inside the demo, and it worked partially. So, and then guaranteed like following all the rules makes for a boring result. So don't go and say like, check, I did that, check, I did this, check. This is probably not the way to go. So, and once in a while, so you can also like try to break all the rules and get like mixed results. But yeah, so my advice to go, so it's easier to design when things have a meaning, and nobody has to understand that meaning but you. So some references, some resources. So there's a FZD School for Design or School of Design, like a Chinese or a Hong Kong guy, can't remember right now, but Feng Shui, he's a little bit full of himself, but he has a reason to be that way. So here's tons and tons and tons of tutorials to build up certain designs and stuff. Then I like that book. It's much better than its cover, but it covers like a whole range of design aspects and is easily approachable. Then there's a series of books from the Art Center, College of Design, Art Center, I got it right. So there's, I think, like 2 or 3 books of that, where they basically have assignments to students, and then the students basically start to like try to do something of these assignments. And for instance, like the Skillful Huntsman, once again, like this is, I think, a Brother Grimm tale or something. And then I took basically chapters of like this tale and said like, okay, and now the huntsman is like reaching the village. Like, how does the village look? And then they come up with like, this is the village. And the huntsman is like in a space shuttle and stuff. So they really go a far way into exploring like this, retelling a story. Then I would say like everybody should buy this book. It's the most expensive book I bought so far, but it's completely worth its money. And there's also now like there's a German-English version. And it's one of the few books where you actually have like decent code and really decent design side by side. So they really know what they're doing. So I love that book. And then I recently started to explore this color correction topic, and this is basically at least the reference I found on that topic, and it gave a very good introduction. And obviously there's like the paint over design thread. So yeah, I want to encourage you to post stuff there and get paint overs and stuff. So, okay, thank you. And yeah, so basically, yeah, you get the point. So, yeah, if you have any questions, oh, actually, 10 minutes over. No questions.